Hey folks, I have read your discussion boards and your papers on nurse sensitive indicators and given you feedback in the rubric and on your paper for both of those assignments. Um, let's talk about the discussion board real quick. Your ideas that you shared about how you heard your calling of nursing. This is one of my favorite discussion boards to read. I'm actually not a big fan of discussion boards, but this one I feel like really gives me and your peers a chance to get to know a little bit about your story and what your background was and how you felt you were called to nursing. It's always interesting to kind of get a sense of where everybody started out from you providing care and nurturing to a family member who was injured or ill, to having your calling very early on in life. Some of you are second career calling folks that heard your calling after you'd already started your life and had babies and finished a first career. This is where the Lord called you. The the idea that family members can support or discourage your plan to be a nurse. You know, when we feel very drawn to a profession and the people that are closest to us aren't right behind us going, yay, this is a great idea, sometimes it can make us question whether we truly were called into a profession, especially with nursing, because the thought of being a nurse can be very daunting. I can remember I think about 18, was a single mom. I had a baby, and I went to my mom and I told her that I was going to nursing school, and she lovingly smiled and reminded me that I could never get out of the doctor's office after having my blood drawn without passing out across the waiting room chairs. And her statement was quite factual. I am extremely squeamish with blood. I never made it through a single nursing OR rotation. They kept sending me back to the OR as a nursing student because I had to write this paper. I never remained awake after the beginning of the incision. All three times passed out. So my mom's warning was make sure you have a plan. And I survived it. I prayed my way through it, and I got through nursing school despite being so squeamish, which may be exactly why I landed in mental health, which was truly my first calling into nursing, and I've absolutely loved that area. I loved hearing how you found your own. One of you spoke about, oh, forgive me, it's been a long day. I can't remember who it was, about questioning your calling and then going into a convenience store to buy a Diet Coke, and the person who's checking you out asked if you were a nurse without any garb or any other warning, and that was your aha. God was serious. He really did call you. Oh, one of you talked about having your dad having an accident, and you were little in the room and had to stand on the stepping stool while offered to watch the physician suture up your dad's head. Got a little queasy reading that, but thought, what an amazing gift that physician was in that moment to help you participate in the care of your father. And second, what an open door that was for you to see healthcare at its best. So many of you had some great stories, from grandmas to moms. It's just such a blessing to read that. And I appreciate your transparency, knowing that you're on a discussion board where people are going to read your stuff. It was a joy to read, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. It really was a blessing. Your nurse sensitive indicator papers, those were pretty clear. Give me 5, support it, tell me how you're going to measure it, you're good. If you had questions or concerns, holler at me and let me know. One of the things that I think people struggle with is you have good ideas for things that are nurse quality indicators that are nurse sensitive, but then figuring out a way to measure it becomes a little bit cumbersome. So if that was an area you struggled with, you were in pretty good company. Give that additional thought, and if you have questions or concerns about feedback that you were given, touch base and let me know. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about your final paper for week 8. First and foremost, be sure that the work in your paper is original work. there's some themes like servant leadership, or Christian leadership that have appeared in other courses, have appeared tangentially in this course. You should not be reusing sections in whole or in part of other work that has been graded and submitted and for as any part of this paper. Now, if you found articles or you flagged pieces or parts of books that you found really supportive when you were writing the other assignments, it's perfectly okay to use articles or references to support your ideas in this paper. But again, they need to be viewed with fresh eyes. You need to be looking at the concept of like servant, I think servant leadership is on there. What do you know about it now? What are your thoughts about it as you've progressed through the course? What new insights do you have? Be sure that all of your work is original work in this paper. Your annotated bibliography, your reference list, those references should be replicated and placed on this paper. Your summaries in those annotated bibliographies are pretty short, and I would not expect to see those kinds of summaries appear in this paper. I guess it wouldn't be terribly weird if like a sentence or two was used if they were summary and they fit, but you shouldn't be copying and pasting all of that into the paper. Just be very careful about how you use your annotated bibliography. The idea for that is to identify resources that you will use to write this paper. Now go back to your annotated bibliography. Be sure that you have read the feedback, either APA or relevance or quality of an article. If you were told this is not the best article to use to support your work in your final paper, I wouldn't suggest you use it, because if it was wrong that week, it's probably not a great plan to use it this week. If in your research you've continued to find articles that you find are more meaningful, it's okay to add to them. If you've read through your annotated bibliography, maybe a couple that you thought were going to fit with your paper don't fit anymore, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be an exact matchup, but you do want to use the annotated bibliography as your guide. So, some things that people struggle with in this paper. One of the big sections has you reviewing, where is it? Number 2, it's to discuss ethical and legal implications that could surface in a leadership role and how Christian worldview influences possible decisions. Just want to remind you that ethical and legal issues are two different things. Don't lump them together. There could be things that are ethical and maybe not it may not be legal. There are things that are legal that are not ethical. Be sure you have clarity in understanding those concepts and that you separate them out and address them with a Christian worldview as two distinct concepts. I wrote something and now I'm too tired to read what I wrote. Nope, I got nothing. No idea what my note was. I'd like to say that was shorthand and I should recognize it, but I'm pretty sure I just scribbled it down and I didn't spell it correctly, and now I don't know what I wrote, which I'd like to say was because I'm tired, but I just don't spell real well either, so that could be the issue. And you know, when you write things, there's no Microsoft red squiggly line that goes under what you wrote and helps you figure it out. So eventually I'll figure out what it is. Hopefully it wasn't too important. Okay, make sure in this paper when you go through your APA structure that your title page has a relevant title, that you are using level 1, level 2, and level 3 headings in this paper. Really organize your thinking. Be precise in how you're organizing it, following the instructions to guide your writing. Make sure that you go through and that you are looking at your reference list and that the references that are on your list are appearing in your paper. Sometimes when you write a paper that could be this long, you add and move things around a little bit and you forget what you've taken out of the paper. So reconcile your reference list with what's in your paper. I'm still a paper and pencil gal, so I'm going to print off my reference list and I'm going to read my paper a final time, and I'm going to check the things off my reference list to make sure that they're in my paper as I read it. And that way, if I come across something that's in my paper that's not on my reference list, I'll remember to add it to my reference list. If I come across things, if I read my whole paper and my reference list has references on it that I haven't checked off, I know that I haven't used them and I remove them. You just want to reconcile those. That can be an unintended type of plagiarism, and we want to try to avoid that, especially this late in the game. You don't need to be dealing with that in week 8. So be thoughtful about that reconciliation process. Be careful as you're writing your paper that you're properly supporting your ideas in in each section and that you're using an appropriate scholarly reference to support your ideas. This really is a kind of a synthesized paper, a scholarly paper, so it should be using the third person. It shouldn't say I or me or my in it. Think about this as being the capstone paper of this course. So I know that you're in the trenches and you're working on this right now. So be very thoughtful, not just about answering the questions, but support your ideas well, and then go through and be sure that your references are well developed and you're using APA structure well. This is normally a really successful paper for students because it's something that their concepts that we've talked about, they're things that are familiar to you. So be comfortable with it and just be thorough in your writing. Make sure that you proofread your final paper. If you're not a good self-proofreader, I am not. I've jokingly told my husband that his name should be on most of my degrees because I have great ideas, but I don't catch my own typos and spelling mistakes. So he has proofed almost every paper I've ever written. And he still sometimes comes and says, I don't know what this word is. So if you're not a good self-proofreader, have somebody that you trust that's a good reader. Just proof your paper. It's amazing sometimes how some of our kids, our young our high schoolers are really good at reading things. So trust another set of eyes, whatever set of eyes that is. So I am going to a conference Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. I am not going to be off the grid. I just may be a little bit slower in replying to email. If you have work that was submitted off schedule and it hasn't been graded, that's going to be something I'm going to get to later this week as I can in between sessions at the conference so that you'll have as much information about your final grade before your final assignment is submitted. That's my goal, but I'm going to be working that in between these sessions at the conference. Again, I'm not falling off the grid. I just want you to know where I am and that my response time may be a little bit slower. Send me an email if it's if you need to speak with me, send me an email and we'll set something up for the evening. Let me know how you are, if there's any concerns, if there's anything I can do for you. Know that I have enjoyed having you in this class. This is going to be your last video from me. There will not be a feedback video for week 8. I have found that people don't watch them because you have already pieced out and moved on to your spring D course. But you will get an email from me that says, hey folks, your course grades have been posted, and I'll ask you if there are any concerns or anything before I post your final grades. So just know that there'll be an email after this. It has been my pleasure. Let me know if there's any questions or concerns you have. I'm here. Take care.